Good afternoon, and welcome to another brain stream where we're going to continue on with the future of the computer. We've been talking a little bit about the operating system and the idea behind it, and there's a couple different puzzle pieces over here that I kind of want to get into and talk about today. They are my LayerOS kind of vision. There's MercuryOS, which is a design or I think a think piece by a guy called Jason that I just reread for the second time. And he's also working on this new app, Dot, which is a type of AI. I've had a little bit of time to dive into that a little bit. And I want to talk about how that works with LayerOS. And from what I've seen, his vision or how he's looking at the future of the desktop, because it's interesting because this is what we've been looking at, the future of the desktop, the future of the computer, but it's really the paradigm beyond the desktop. It's really the paradigm beyond post apps. It's the idea of like moving beyond the application, this window, this silo. There is the spatial aspect to it, but it's very much the how we deal with it. So spatial in of itself had this design that I used to call the personal. There was a private, personal, and public area. That's how I kind of like divided the different spheres. And that was back in Meta. And it kind of works a little bit with LayerOS. And what I'm doing right now is in my head, I'm working between all them. Well, this is a constant thought and experiment that is going on. And I'm looking to kind of move that forward. And I don't know if I'm going to write it out, mock it up, create something, but it's something that's been going on in my head, and there's lots of different ideas coming together. So I'm kind of like bringing them all together, looking how Apple's dealt with it, looking at a bunch of individuals, not just this guy that I just refound a couple days ago, and not just my own stuff, which have come from augmented reality, come from personal assistants, Hollywood, all the different influences, and kind of looking back and going, okay, what's the paradigm shift what's the paradigm that we're currently in, right? This desktop metaphor, this idea of using the computer, a flat screen 2D interface, the keyboard and the mouse, and moving into not just the spatial world, but how does that all work? Because if you look at the spatial world that Apple is showing with the Vision Pro, and you see a world which is like, hey, let's just chuck in an unlimited amount of holographic iPads or a MacBook. Like it's essentially what it is. Even mirroring the display and all this, and there's arguments to be said. Yes, we understand why you're doing that because you're moving us from one paradigm to the next, and you kind of have to do that in the way that people understand. But it's also showing a lack of understanding of like what is the real power of augmented reality. And I don't want to say that. I say that in a way where I'm not branding Apple as saying they have no idea what they're doing, because them, like many other big, massive companies, have very, very smart people in them, way smarter than I am, and have been thinking about these ideas for longer than I have. So we will have different approaches to this. I don't think that my approach is that the holographic approach, this idea of like multiple screens, it is not a revolution. It's not revolutionary. It's evolutionary. It's this idea that, yes, if you're working in the current paradigm and you've got a 13-inch screen, a 15-inch screen, anywhere in that realm, if you're working if you're working in an office, you're most likely going to have dual monitors, if not more. So what better use of a virtual reality device or augmented reality device to say, hey, now I can have an infinite amount of screens wherever I go. I don't need to be chained to my desk anymore. I could do this I could do this on the subway. I can do this wherever I'm going, which is the direction that I agree with. I like that thinking, that initiative, that now I can be productive. But to be productive behind a 2D screen, that wall, that paradigm, that flat interface, that a visual interface, one that works off computers, a keyboard and a mouse, and where that is the current main way of interfacing, one where the visual the UI, the user interface, the visual interaction, the way that you interface with your device is like 95% the way you're doing it. And the audio is just entertainment, which is slowly changing now that we've got these LLMs, now we've got these chatbots, these newer chatbots, namely ChatGPT, and understanding that that can be built into things like Siri, we're going, okay, no, I can use my voice. But even then, you realize that the current paradigm, and Apple has not done much to shift it, is you're still using Siri for a very, very quick instruction. It's one and done. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They're setting the groundwork. There's only so much you can do at a certain point. You can't just reinvent the wheel in a year or in 2 years. So okay, benefit of the doubt. They are laying the groundwork. But we are about to come into a whole new operating system, and to even look at that, like for example, I the the um the gesture that Apple uses. I don't know that I keep forgetting the term because I developed, prototyped, created, developed this 12, 13 years ago for the Meta, which I called reticle gesture. So I keep thinking of that name whenever I think of their approach. But the idea of melding eye tracking and hand gestures, which today just sounds super obvious because Apple's done it. Unless you're not Apple or you hate your competitor to them, in which case you're going to say no, you still should have accommodation for a game controller or a keyboard or things like that. But yes, when you actually look at their implementation, I'm sorry, it's really cool, and the UI is beautiful, but you can still understand this doesn't compare to a mouse. Like, and if you can't compare to a mouse when using this system, it's not going to be. It hasn't gotten there yet. It's very slow, right? Your eyes are moving very, very quick. So when my intent is when I have my eyes as my intent and my hands are doing the action that allows me to say, okay, I'm actually interested in that. We have to understand that how fast our eyes are. And I'm sorry, you cannot pair them together one by one and say that this is going to work. So you have to look at the item that you're controlling. My eyes need to be moving and glancing around, and my system needs to be able to catch up to that and understand that as I'm working through it, it's not a simple task to do. But to be able to understand that I'm looking at the next thing when I'm typing on a keyboard, I'm not looking at my keys. Imagine if I had to look at every single key. This is why they say, don't use the on-screen keyboard. Use either Siri or use an actual keyboard, because our eyes move a lot faster, and a lot of the things that we've been learning, the interfaces, is beyond the eyes. We've got to get beyond these artificial limitations of the mouse and the keyboard and realize that our brain works in very different ways. And just because we're being constrained to use them because those were the best inputs for the old paradigm, we've got to realize that the new paradigm is very different. We're going to have to use definitely eyes, but the gesture cannot slow us down based on where our eyes are looking, because that is really slow. And there are so many things I see in technology where people are like, oh, people are going to get used to it. No, the current iteration of how it is, it needs to be improved. This needs to be Gen 1 eye tracking, like the Apple Pencil 1. Like, we cannot have this working if you want people actually to use this. We have to understand that voice is going to be a huge power. And this is getting into this, my point, and this has become kind of a rant against the Vision Pro, which I didn't mean that, because I think I for one, I'm happy it's here, and I think it needs to improve dramatically. It can't be called augmented reality. It's let's not get into that point. The idea is that we're moving into a new paradigm, and I don't think they've caught up yet. And for me, I believe that the voice, the personal assistant, the way you're going to communicate with that is going to be a huge, huge part of it. And when I give people my thoughts of where this goes, they're like, no one's going to do this. It seems some people say it's creepy. Some people say it's not privacy. That's why I designed this wallpaper for Siri, for showing people you can opt in, right? Just like you can choose an unlimited amount of wallpapers on iOS, Siri becomes one wallpaper, right? And when you opt into the wallpaper, now you're opting into the new paradigm where Siri is always listening. And in that paradigm, you have privacy mode, which you can shut her eyes or any other. This is just what I've designed. And when you shut her eyes, all microphones could completely cease. Let's use the conspiracy, not even conspiracy. Let's use the idea that the microphone's always on and all apps have access to it and they're tracking everything we're listening to our advantage. Let's have Siri listen to us. And if Siri listen to us, where we're not even controlling it, but it's happening in the background and we get suggestions. I have to finish off this design of like suggestions on the lock screen of everything that's been going on and seeing, just imagine automation, delegation, suggestions, all these different things coming together, intents, whatever you want to call it, in the background. This is a huge paradigm shift. And I think not a lot of people are thinking about that enough, and not a lot of designs are happening over there. And this is just part of it. LayerOS is a very visual layer, but it's a different concept, but it's fundamentally inside of this idea of this new new operating system, which is a completely new way of interacting. Time's up. I'll see you guys in the future.